Hello everyone, this is Tina from Tina's Workshop, and this video has been a very long time coming. It has been over a year of working on this now. And I finally have my 2 Wonderland yarn blankets finished. But before I show you how they look, let's take a moment to see how we got to this point. Hello everyone, this is Tina from Tina's Workshop, and I am back again with another month of the Wonderland yarn subscription box. And every month we are making blocks that will, at the end of the year, become a beautiful blanket. Our color palette I've pinned up here on my wall. Inspirational color palette for the year. And our box has arrived. Of course, I've seen what's in here already because I've worked squares up, but beautiful gold wrap. And our beautiful yarn for this month. And it's probably my favorite so far because I love these greens. And the green it's a little bit richer than what it's showing up on the camera, but it is very pretty. So here is my stack so far, and I still have a bit more catch up to do. I'm going to show you the previous months and then we'll go to this month. So I now have 3 of my knit squares done for January. I need to do 1 more of January's, and I still need 1 more of the crochet for January. And then February, I still have just 1 and 1 done. So I need 1 more crochet, and I need to do 3 more knit. March, I have just 1 of each. This one is the crochet, and this one is the knit. And then this month, we have for our crochet square, on both of my crochet squares this month. And I kind of like the little twist that it ends up with. So those are the crochet squares. And then for the knit square, and here is the knit square. I still need to do the other ones for that. And it looked, when I first saw the picture of it, it looked really kind of complicated. It was actually really easy. So I love that, and even the back looks kind of cool. But you can, the knit block for this month. Isn't that pretty? Now, I will say, worked with the yarn overs and knitting together, and over the year we had a lot of beautiful squares that came out of the minds of our designers, and it was exciting to see what they came up with each month, and each one of these squares was centered around a different novel. But then it came to the end and time to put these squares together into a blanket, and there lied a challenge. So I laid them out multiple different ways, trying to decide how I wanted to do it. And I even switched them to grayscale to see how they would look with the tonal, and switched them around with the grayscale. It did not quite work. I did have one other way I had laid this one out, but the picture disappeared. But ultimately, for the crocheted one, I decided that I would do the gradient from the dark to the light. Well, I have spent the morning laying these squares out in different directions, different patterning, both the knit ones and the crochet ones. My son has been helping me do it too. So at the moment, I think this is what I'm going to do for the crochet one. and go from a gradient kind of from the darker blues down to the pinks. I tried even, and I will insert pictures, I tried to even flip this to a gradient and work those. Yeah, that didn't work right either. So where I've got some colors only have literally two. I mean, there's only two of each square, but like there's 4 different teals. But there's only 2 greens and 2 golds, 2 very light blue. So I think this is going to work the best on this one. And so I'm going to go ahead and sew this one up, and then I will lay the other one out again. I think I figured out how I'm going to do that one too. I'm not extremely happy with how they're laying out, but I think this is going to work the best with the squares I have. So I'm going to work on this. So now we move on to the knit blanket, and this one came with a whole new set of challenges. With 4 squares, I had more options, but I still had these very dark squares and these very light squares, and then a bunch of squares that were very, very similar. So I just kept laying them out and taking pictures and discussing with my son over the phone. And I actually had these ones I had laid out while I was at church doing my handmade projects for my Presbyterian women. And I thought, okay, I'll lay them out on the table while I'm there. And I had him on the phone and kept sending him pictures and, okay, switch this one and switch that one. And we kept trying. And we found some we kind of liked, but there's still, each time there was just something that needed switched, something that just wasn't quite right. So eventually it gets closer and I lay it out on the table at home. And my husband says, well, why don't you try it in order of months? So I did that. And I tried the gradient too. So I'm on to the knit one now. I have laid this out a ton of different ways, and ultimately I ended up deciding I like this look that is like completely random. So I think this is the way it's going to stay, and I did take pictures of it. So yeah, time to sew these gazillion squares together. I am so done with sewing. So yeah, that was a long road to get to this point. I only recorded a couple clips of me sewing. You didn't need to see all that sewing. There was a lot of sewing. I actually stayed up until 1 a.m. last night sewing. Had planned to stay up all night long, but by 1, I was getting too sleepy to hold my eyes open anymore. So I put it down, and then I've been sewing all day today, and it is now 8:30 at night. And I have finally gotten these 2 blankets completely finished. So they've all been blocked. Well, the squares have all been blocked ahead of time and then put together. So they have not been blocked as a blanket, only been blocked as squares. So I'm going to hold them. I'm holding them lengthwise so that you can see more. I think I'll pull my camera out a little bit too, so that I'm not dropping it this way. So I'm going to hold it out further this way so you can see it. Okay, I'm going to move the microphone over, and then I'm going to stand up and show you the 2 blankets. So that was the crochet one. And now for the knit one. The knit one's just a tiny bit bigger. I'm so happy that these blankets are done. Extremely happy that these blankets are done. So they're a little bit smaller than I had expected. I did the in-between size that was supposed to be a throw size. And honestly, the crochet one, maybe a lap throw, but it's pretty small to just be a regular throw. The knit one can kind of work as a throw, but the crochet one needs just a little bit bigger, I think. What I think myself personally would be really nice on both of these is a nice decorative crochet border. Even on the knit one, I think a pretty crochet border would be nice on it. But I am doing these specifically for Wonderland Yarns. I am sending them to be photographed and everything. And I am doing it specifically by the pattern. And the pattern did not actually say how to any, specific patterning to put your squares together in, but it does not. It just says put it together in the means that you want to, and it doesn't say anything about a border or anything like that. And of course, everything's up to you how you want to do it, but I am really trying to stick to exactly what they had put in their pattern. So one of these blankets will be coming back to me. One they will be keeping. I have chosen to keep the knit one. The biggest reason is this is the first knit blanket I have done. I've done many crochet blankets, but I've never done a knit blanket before, and I learned a lot through the process of this knit blanket. So I really want to keep the knit one. And when it comes back to me, I don't know. I might put a border on it, but I'm not really sure. Few things looking back upon this. The squares. Some of my squares are different sizes. Now, through the whole thing, I used the needles and or hook that they had specified. For my needles, I had these I used, and I used the same ones every month. Same with the crochet. And so I was not varying in that. There was 1 month on the crochet that they actually said, okay, you get to this point and check your gauge and adjust that if you needed to. And my camera shut off. Anyway, I did do that and ended up actually redoing this square. So this was the square I had done that was too big. So I did redo that one so that it was smaller to what it needed to be. Now, every time when I blocked my squares, sometimes I had a square that blocked perfectly. Other times I had ones that were too large, really. So I was squaring off the edges, but I wasn't really stretching it at all. And then there was a few times I had ones that were honestly a little bit too small. So I was really trying to stretch them. And I noticed that as I was sewing them together that I had to adjust sometimes for that. That bothered me a little bit. That is so frustrating. That's the second time my camera just shut off, telling me that I need to change my battery. However, I had it plugged in to the wall, so the battery didn't need change. So now I put a battery into it, a regular battery, so hopefully the battery doesn't go dead on me. And now I forgot where I was. I think I was talking about the different sizes of squares. So the squares ended up being slightly off, even though each one was supposed to be blocked to this size and this size and this size. I blocked them to that size, whether I was going this way or that way. But I do notice a little bit of puckering because of that. These dark ones, they ended up being looser. And it doesn't look too bad hanging there right now. Of course, it's not going to focus. But like these ones were a tighter one. These ones were really tight. Different ones ended up differently. What's funny is this one was one of my bigger ones. So in the knit one, it was tighter. In this one, it was bigger. This was another one. This was tight in this one. But in the knit version, it was a little bit looser. So it's the way it is. And I've put a lot of work into it. I love them both. Oh, I didn't mention, and I might have mentioned as I showed the different pictures as I was figuring out what I was doing, but on the off chance I didn't, since I haven't recorded that part yet. The crochet one, I ended up doing a variegation of color. So it goes from the pinks across and down to the dark blues. And I did it that way because I only had 2 squares of each color. And no matter how I flip-flopped it, they just didn't quite go right. So doing that gradient of color, I thought worked the best with that. I'm very happy with that. But then if you noticed when I did the knit one, I set it up so many different ways. And in the end, the one I decided I liked the best was completely hodgepodge. And my husband said, oh, what about doing it in order of as you had made them? So I started doing January, February, March, April, May, and I went all the way through and then repeated and kept going. And it was kind of mismatched, and I liked that, but it still needed a little bit more mismatch. So I went through and flip-flopped a few more squares till I was happy with it. And so this one is just completely mismatched. And I'm really glad I ended up doing it that way. So I really like that. And I will say, for being a small blanket, these things were heavy. There's a lot of yarn weight, I guess maybe where they're wool. I never really thought that much about that before this, but they're hefty. So that is our Wonderland blankets to tour of the season completed for 2024, and I finished it the last day of January 2025. So that's not too bad. I was 1 month over, and technically it was towards the end of January when I had actually started this whole project. So I did it within just around a year. But it is done, and I hope you have enjoyed this journey. And if you would like to see more in depth on any of these squares, this video is in a playlist with all those videos, so they will all be in one playlist together. There is a discount code in the description below. It does not work on their subscriptions, but it will get you 20% off on other things. So make sure and go check that out. They do have a new blanket one they're doing this year, and they have other monthly things, but they also have stuff you can just go buy. So make sure and check them out. Make sure and click like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all again soon.